session 3 of the second half of the ops track. There is a lot, so we like to remind people because many tracks going on, like 4 tracks, 48 speakers, and so always good to like orientate yourself. Next up, Cass, very excited to have you.
Thank you.
The title of your session is Don't Start with Tools, Start with People and Processes. Stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much. You know, for someone who's been in technology sales nearly my entire career, it's probably shocking to hear me say, don't start with tools. And yet it must be said because people see tools as a magic bullet. And use this great analogy just as I was joining today, and it was people think tools are going to get the work done. And that logic is like thinking you can get a gym membership and be bulked up the next day. And I loved that analogy because they really do think that. They think the tool is going to solve a problem. But really, a tool automates a process, even a bad one. So what can you do to make sure your tools are a good investment with a solid ROI and not more of an impediment than a help? And that's what we're going to talk about today. For me, the origin of RevOps, or the goal of RevOps, is to get what's in the way of sales out of the way of sales, which ultimately leads to more revenue. Leading front office technology transformation teams at Optimove and Nextiva and a long list of other larger technology companies, I have reliably seen the same challenges. So tools are seen as a silver bullet. Oh, well, hold on. Tools are seen as, speaking of tools being seen as a silver bullet, tools are seen as a silver bullet. Poor processes get automated and people suffer because the push is for adoption metrics to make sure the tool is seen as a value add. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's unpack that. When tools are seen as a silver bullet, then the results that what happens is adoption metrics are seen as like what is valuable about this tool is everyone using it. So then we kind of push and force the tool to be adopted, even if it's not actually solving a problem, even if it's automating something that wasn't working. So what I've seen in past organizations is there'll be some system that a tool was put in place to interface with, and then but the system was homegrown, and that's common. And lots of startups start with a homegrown tool, and it kind of becomes the central hub. But that homegrown tool doesn't have microservices, it doesn't have an API. And so what happens is there's this hard code. And that engineer that's the hard code becomes completely invaluable. You can't lose them. She has all the tribal knowledge, or he has all the tribal knowledge, and we have to keep them around. And they're working on something that they don't love. It's not new and exciting technology. It's like keeping the business afloat that something needed to get done fast. And so that's kind of I think maybe the motivation is a lot of times it needed to get done fast. So let's go to the in short. In short, tools are awesome. I mean, think about life before CRM or even spreadsheets, right? Some of you, I was 5 at the time. But they automate existing processes, right? And so people have to think about what's the fallout? What process are you automating? Are you automating your problems? Are you creating bigger problems? And so when you are thinking about that, you have to really think about the tool as a solution to an automation. Right? So we start with people. Who's involved? Who touches this? What are they doing? And if we look at that in practice, right, there's some work to do. An old saying, measure twice, cut once. You'll get what you need for the future. How does what you're implementing scale long term? These are things that you need to think about. So what I recommend is bringing everybody together that impacts the system, touches the system, diagram all your current processes. Right? Diagram all your current processes. Talk to people about why they're doing what they're doing, what's important. Think about, have a capabilities mindset. So you might say, I need to send an email to all of my sales reps. And that's like a feature that you're looking for. But what you're really, the capability you're looking for is real-time communication about intent data. Let's just say we're making something up as we go. And there are, what I think I've seen, 3,000 applications now in the MarTech space, 3,000 applications in this space, and growing every year. So how do you know which? I mean, they're all pretty similar. If you pick a media, pick sales enablement, for example, you need content to be presented at the right time for the right purpose that's usable by the rep as close to real time as possible. You need a training tool that coaches reps about what they're saying and how they're saying it to get that 1% or 2% improvement that's really going to drive revenue for the whole organization. So when you think about it, when you're brainstorming with your team, and not just your team, but the stakeholders, the people doing the work, like we sometimes in operations forget to sit in and see how the work is done and see what customers are saying. And, there's homework to do. So when we sit with them and we look at their capabilities, what from a capabilities perspective, what's important? So high level, do that. As you diagram your current process, that will help you think about, oh yeah, I didn't even think we need this capability. Not only do we need to send real-time email communications, but we want AI to go look at historical and real-time data and segment our current customers into micro segments so we can target our customer message better. I mean, that's an example of a tool, but where's your current process? Does it support that? Do you have the content to tailor the message? Do you have to design content on the fly? Do you have a content team? Is there a designer that's a bottleneck? Right. So these are kind of things that as you diagram your current process, you'll see where maybe potential areas of weakness. Maybe because a lot of organizations, especially small to growing organizations, we'll call it that startup, like round B funding. They might not have a dedicated person to run a tool, right? They don't have a tool admin. So it's a hobby. And then we're going to implement it, like set it and forget it. And so can the tool operate in that mindset? Can it take the process that you have and automate it in a way that it can be set it and forget it, because it is somebody's hobby. They're, doing it after hours and on weekends. We want to compare all the tools to the needed capacity or capabilities. Have you heard of this term called SaaS sprawl? And SaaS sprawl is where, and this happens all the time, engineering uses Jira to manage projects, and that's their project tool. And marketing uses Asana. And then customer delivery is using Smartsheets. And then, the product team is using Monday.com, right? Or a spreadsheet, right? So we have 5 or 6 different project management tools that really are providing the same functionality. And each of those things have different cost models. Each of those apps have different cost models. They have a tech debt from an overhead perspective of the systems that they integrate with, the API calls to integrate with those systems. Somebody has to manage it. So just a human resources of who's managing. There's a security risk that security has to look at on all of those systems. And hopefully someone's doing that before you implement the tools, right? Have a security review. So you think about all of those things that have to happen to properly use a tool, and there's 6 of the same thing in the organization. So that's kind of SaaS sprawl. So it ends up costing the organization in so much more than just license costs, right? And so when you're thinking about being a good steward of your technology and being a good steward of corporate finances, then this is a place where you want to compare your needed capabilities or capacities with what you have existing in your organization. And then when you decide there is a gap, a tool will fill this gap. It will automate a good process. And when you get to that, then you use a rubric. Okay, what is a rubric? Some people might go like, don't have fourth graders and don't know that a rubric says for this category of learning, we need to make sure to check off these boxes. And a 1 means not so great, and a 5 means great. It met all of these areas of sophistication, let's say. So use a rubric, and it keeps you honest because you're going to like one of the sales reps better. You're going to get in a process and you're going to really like a sales rep, and that tool might not be the right tool. Right? You want it to be your silver bullet. Do the work, keep yourself honest, keep subjection out of it as much as possible. Of course, you want to like the sales rep you buy from. So I think what's important here is do the work, know your why, diagram the process current and through the tool, like what it will look like in the future. Is there any gaps? Document your gaps. Compare the tools to a rubric. Keep a rubric. Make sure that it's documenting your current capabilities. That's what goes into the rubric, and then determine how to actually measure success ahead of time. Then once you implement the tool, actually measure that. Don't let adoption be the statistic you use. Like, it's win rate, it's open rate, it's click-through rate. Whatever your measurement is of success, it's additional revenue, it's reduced churn. All of those things are super critical, and the tool needs to deliver the promise. Otherwise, you're managing a lot, and manipulating a process that isn't really benefiting you. So you really can do more with less when you have a consistent process, and you start with the people and you keep them in mind, and you remember that the tools are for them. So I think I'll leave you with this. Technology is a great servant, but it is one terrible master. That was said by Stephen Covey. So,
I love that, Cassandra. Thank you so much. If there are questions from the audience, write them in the chat. We'll take them from there. I think there are a couple of reactions that I was thinking through, and we were chatting about this a couple of days ago as well. I love the idea, tools are an always growing thing at every company. Companies now have like a bazillion tools that they have to manage, constantly buy, and rethink through. And one important point that you're raising, I think, is watch out, because tools might end up automating bad processes, and then you're not actually buying a solution, you're buying additional problems, and those are going to cost you even more compared to what it was costing you before.
That's right. I mean, ultimately, when you think about scale, right, you have to take the things that people do manually today, like maybe you're a small organization and you need an automated billing product, right?
Right.
And finance is usually the one doing that billing, and they think through their capabilities. Like, okay, we need something that knows the amount to bill and then sends automatically a bill, and then follows up for a payment. Hopefully they're thinking that through, and can recognize revenue properly in the 606, right? But are they thinking like, okay, where is the product master coming from? Otherwise, now we have this tool that's going to automate billing, but if we add a new product, does the billing system know about it? Does it break? Can they bill something? So you have to think through the data flow. The capability is from lead or prospect all the way to cash, right? And then it's actually all the way back to renewal, right? So have you thought about the capabilities across the work streams, not just the things that impact your particular team or stakeholders? And that's where I think I heard the last speaker talk about working in silos, and some silos are good, but some silos really impact the organization. Have you thought through that?
Yeah.
So that was like really smart insight, because you can automate a problem and make it a 10 times bigger problem.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And the other thing that I was thinking about, and we were like talking through on the regard of this topic, is the idea that most people will think about the tool assuming that the tool implies like best practices, but that is not necessarily the case, right? And so like the solution to what you're trying to address might not necessarily be a tool, but a better process.
It could be a better, that's absolutely right. You could be saving yourself a lot of time and money
Right.
and headaches and cut over hours and the weekends if you don't buy the tool because you don't actually need the tool. And
Right.
it's, the first thing you like, if you identify you have a problem, the first thing you're usually doing as a buyer is Google, like, okay, how do I solve this problem? And there's a tool marketing team out there
Yes,
who
that's where
knows that that's your
you find that
problem.
answer. Yeah.
Oh, they have a blog with some decent tips, and you go there, and now you're in their prospect list because you were a visitor to their
Exactly.
website. This is
Love
how
it.
it
Love
goes.
it so much.
Yeah, do the back
Do
end
the
homework.
work, ask the why, make sure that you're running a good enough process and that the answer to your like question is not we should have a better process instead of of a tool, right? Because those
That,
would be the case.
exactly right. And I'm all for tools. I think tools do solve a lot of problems
Yeah.
in the context of I've done my work. So there's something immediately actionable here.
Mhm.
Probably everyone on the call is considering some tool for 2023.
Oh yes, everyone, 100%.
100% of us, right? Maybe 10, right? And so the question is to ask yourself, the thing to do when you hang up today is to say, okay, what is the real problem? And then who touches the problem? And what other systems implement could solve this inside the organization? And
Mhm.
how do we test the problem? Like, can we test the metric? Is there a way to, in our current process, to test that if we automate this, we'll get better results? Like, that's the immediate actionable item is diagram your process, find the gaps.
Cassandra, that was great. Thank you so much. And thanks for watching, everyone. Let Cassandra know how her session was with the quick survey that you can find here in the chat. Cassandra, very much appreciated.
Thanks.